Well, hello, and thank you again for taking the time to watch this short demo of Sage 100 Contractor. In this particular session, we're going to be talking about project management. My name is Contractor with Cherry Becker. Now, before we get into some of the project management features within the system, kind of want to take a look at the actual dashboard, some of what we call the quick hits of a dashboard, okay? The reason why that is because it's quick information that we can pull up when we first open the system. And if I'm a project manager, I'm able to see very quickly, a lot of information that can tell me that is important to a project, such as outstanding change orders. If we have change orders out there that need to be approved, that need to be reviewed, that way we can get those change orders moved through the system and get them onto the next progress bill. As well as if we're underbilled on a job or overbilled on a project. Simple dashboard information, what percentage we are on the contract, as well as our job cash flow to date. Exactly how much cash have we collected, what is our cost, and as well as what our net cash is. And very important, as we can see here, is I have some other information that we can customize, such as jobs over budget. As you can tell, we have a project out here in 201 where we have a budgeted hours of 25, but actual hours is over 2,000 hours. So then what calls us to stop and say exactly what's happening with this project, what's causing our hours to go over budget. Did we forget something in the estimate? Did we not put the budget hours in when we bought in the actual estimate? And actually our job contract budget and our costs to date. As you can see here on some of the information that we have, such as our contract, what our budget is, and how much cost have we accumulated against that particular budget. And as you can look here, there's some things that Sage will allow us to do, because it's just more than just me looking at some numbers and saying, oh, wow, we have $436,000 worth of cost. If I were to take this information, if I were to drill down on this, I can drill down in these reports, and it will actually take me down to a layer showing me all of the invoices, the change orders, and the actual cost that's associated with this particular project. So it's more than just me having, a dashboard and showing me some numbers. I'm able to drill down into these reports from the dashboard to give me information to tell the story of what's happening behind the project. And as you can see, I can go down to a cost journal. It takes me to the very, very detail of the actual transaction that has happened on this project. So if I were to go all the way down to page 4, there is my total $436,000 worth of cost. And if I wanted to drill down even further, yes, the system will allow me to drill down even further if I wanted to go down to the actual job cost record, showing me exactly the detail behind the cost code, the cost type, and as well as the cost amount that's associated with this particular project and where it came from. Okay. So those are just some quick pointers when we talk about going into the system. If I will open up the Sage system, this dashboard will open up, or I can have it open up automatically, or anytime I can go down and just say, show me dashboard. And when I click the dashboard, it will open up, and it can also be set for a project manager. It can be set for accounting. So if those are in the accounting world, you're not left out. You can come in and add and remove and customize this dashboard based on the information that you would like to see. So from the accountant standpoint, I might want to look more at the ledger, look at the payables, but from a project manager, I may want to see my projects. Okay. Now we can set up what is called alerts in the system. So as you can see here, I have certain alerts. So that will pop up. I can have it emailed, or I can have it sent to my dashboard. It can be either way. An alert is basically something that's in the system that maybe need to have some eyes checked on. So in this case, I have a payables invoice with the transaction date that does not match the GL posting date. So that for somebody in accounting can take a look at. Then I have one in here that says subcontract saved with committed cost that exceeds the budget. Well, I may want to have a project manager to take a look at that. So we can set up different alerts within the system that could come up to notify individuals based on their particular workflows and what they're doing in the company. Now, let's take a dive into the actual project management features within Sage 100 Contractor. Now, in our last session, we talked about kind of the job setup and kind of the overview of the system. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the actual project manager features. As we said in our last session that, the job is the star of the show and the budget is the co-star. But how do we get a budget within the system? So one of the first important things is after setting up the project is getting the actual budget, the estimate in the system. So in this particular case, we're going to go out, we're going to set our project up. We're going to go put in 286 or 280, put our next project in here. We have a job out there that we're going to go and look at. And then we want to see exactly where our what our budget's going to be. So in this case, we have job 238, doesn't have a budget on the side of it. So I'll type in 238 and it's Siesta. And I simply come into options and then I want to import my budget file. I already have a budget file sitting out there. It's basically a CSV file. So guys, don't be thinking like, well, I need to know what a budget file is. No, it's just basically a CSV file that we've just changed the name into budget file. Okay. And we simply say, okay, and we import our budget file into the system. And it's going to bring in all of our information that we saw in our last session on the job setup as far as our budget. It's going to bring in all of my cost codes, my material, and all that information that I have put out there in my budget. Okay. And kind of an example here, we see exactly in the case of example, job 186, I have my budget hours. So I have my hours that I bought in, my material, my labor, my equipment, and any subcontractors that I may have associated with this budget. And then giving me the total hours down here at the bottom and the totals by cost amount. Now, one thing that is very important to say, once we can play with the budget a couple of times, but once we have a signed contract, we want to actually go in and set the budget. What that allows us to see is, especially if we want to kind of go through and make just some changes on the other side of the budget, when we don't want to actually dissipate and get rid of our original budget, we can set the budget and still allow us to come over on the left-hand side of the budget to make any kind of changes we want to against the cost codes, against the hours, and the different cost types, while at the same time keeping our original amounts. So therefore, then we're not getting rid of our original budget. Okay. Also within the system, if we go in and import our budget, we also have a couple of different ways that we can put data within the system. If we look at a new budget and look at options in importing our budget, we also can bring in what is called a grid file or an HCSS template. So for those out there that are doing heavy highway that use HCSS, yes, there is a template that can be bought in directly in the Sage 100 Contractor. In fact, so this is the foundation of our cost that comes within the system as far as our original estimate and budget. This is going to go on all the job cost reports, such as our WIP report, our job cost summary report, our job journal reports. All of our job cost reports will have the baseline of the actual budget. So that way we can start comparing cost as cost is accumulated in the system against the original budget. Okay. Once we put our budget in, then we have what is called our proposal. Okay, our proposal is going to be our budget amount as that includes our profit and our overhead. So a lot of times when you talk about 10 key in information, in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the proposal, but it's not the end of the world because I want to show you exactly how we bring it in. So if I bring in and I want to bring in a proposal, which is our contract amount, a lot of times we can bring that in. It's our budget plus profit and overhead, like I said, but nobody wants to sit down and 10 key that information all over again, or they don't want to kind of import it. So when we bring in the proposal, AKA the contract amount, we bring in the budget and then we can actually put in our percentage of what we want it to be. So if I want to make 10% overhead and say a 5% profit, then I just simply import and the system's going to take care and do all the math for us on the back end. So allowing us to bring that proposal, AKA contract, based on the budget, and nobody has to sit down and 10 key that information all over again. Because the more we 10 key, the more likelihood that we're going to cause human error, and there may be some mistakes that we put in. So in this case, we can just simply import the budget, put in our overhead percentage and our profit percentage, allowing us to actually see what our contract amount is going to be. So now we see exactly based on the material, labor, equipment, subcontract, other, and our total value of our particular contract. Okay. Now, as we discussed, we can bring this in either by cost code or we can do this by bid items. And at the same time, we can bring in budgets and proposals based on the mini job. So if we have a larger project and we're working on building A, building B, building C, we can go in and bring in the budget based on building A, building B, building C, as well as the proposal, breaking out the cost and the revenue at the mini job inside of a larger project. Go ahead and select save here. And similar to what we've done with our budget, we also can go out and set the proposal. So we can go out, set our proposal. It will bring in and hard code it onto the right-hand side of the actual system. So where nobody can come in and actually override these original amounts. And that means the proposal has been set. We still can go on the left side columns and we can kind of manipulate and kind of play with the numbers. But on this side, once the proposal was set, you will always have access to that original proposal, similar to the budget. Okay, select save. So as we've gotten, our budget set, we've put in our proposal, but the next phase we want to look at is going and issuing the subcontracts and the purchase orders. So opening up purchase orders and subcontracts. So purchase orders, all the material costs that's associated with the actual project, allowing us to actually bring that information into the system. So in this case, I already have I've got all of my purchase orders into the system. Now, there are those asking the question, do I have to 10 key all of the purchase orders? If you use Sage Estimating Basic, you can simply export all of the purchase orders directly from the Estimating Basic application, and it will land right here in the actual purchase order 661 screen, and it will land in the status of review. And this is where we get the source from takeoff. Okay. So we have all of our POs kind of looking at our purchase order, looking at it in status of review. In this case, I'm returning it to a status of open. We see who our vendor is. We see the order number. We see the parts that have come in. We can set who is it ordered by. So that means we can actually see the employee who ordered this information. Little side note here, because I have a little story that I like to tell. One of my former clients she was out sick for a little while, and she actually had one of her accounting clerks that actually decided to set up the fictitious vendor, set up a fictitious purchase order, and then set up fictitious AP invoices, and therefore experience some company theft. So it's very important that we have what is called safeguards around our purchasing process. So the individuals that may be setting the purchase orders may not be the same individuals approving the invoice. So we want to make sure that there's safeguards in approval process and actually the material, because sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of embezzlement happens from, the purchase order to the invoicing. Oh, this generator, this steel door supplier, yeah, I'm going to say it's going to cost $5,000, but really the cost is $4,735. So what we call skimming off of the top. So we want to make sure that we're actually keeping what is checks and balances within the actual system. Okay. Not only are we able to see, as far as what we can see, the open invoices, any invoices that have been generated against this purchase order, we'll be able to track all of the invoices as well. And if we're tracking inventory, we can put it into an inventory location. If we need to do inventory, yes, Sage 100 Contractor does do inventory. Light projects or those that are contractors that hold a little inventory. So we could take the items, bring them into inventory, and then they can take from inventory and move them to the actual project. And if we're in service, you can take them from the inventory, put them to the warehouse, and you can take them from the warehouse and put them to a service vehicle. Okay. Now, a couple of different options here. I'll close automatically. So budget over PO warning, we can set up where if the budget or the actual PO, if it exceeds the amount. So in this case, I have $4,735.01. So I can set up a warning. If it goes up to $4735.02, I can have the actual system flag a warning up and say this particular purchase order is going over budget. So going back to that whole skimming fiasco that happened. Well, if somebody says $5,000, I can actually set up a warning in the system saying, no, this should not be $5,000. This is actually $4735.01. Okay. So I can the system allows me to set up a purchase order budget warning, meaning that it will allow me. Now, you got some out there that say no message at all, I don't care. Well, I wouldn't do that. That's a little extreme. You can have it to where it's not allowed. So even if somebody accidentally 10 keys something incorrectly, not saying everybody does embezzlement because that's not true, but even if somebody just accidentally 10 keys something incorrectly, you can still have the system set at the flag and say no, not allowed, and they can stop. I 10 keyed this wrong. Not only do we have what is called our budget over warning, but we also have close automatically. Two different options in the purchase order. So when the balance is zero, so if I have a zero balance, meaning that I've already invoiced for $44,735.01, and once it's been invoiced to that amount, it can close the PO for us, and that means the PO has actually been closed. Or we can set it to when the quantity, especially if we have hundreds of quantities, we may be receiving, we've received 10 here, we've received 15 here, we received 20 here. Therefore, then once we reach the zero quantities amount, it can also close the PO for us automatically. Okay. Purchase orders, similar. What we can do is we could go out, take it. I'm gonna save this PO here real quick, and then I'm gonna kind of go to the print screen. Oh, see, there it is right there, because I have it set up. The actual committed cost of the budget and approved change order does not match this amount. So here is a particular good warning about we exceeding over the original budget. In this case, I'm just going to say save. This is sample data, so we don't have to everybody go like, oh no, what are you doing? Just sample data. We're going to go in and let's go ahead and print this particular purchase order to see exactly what it looks like. So I want to go down here and see exactly my purchase order. I have a couple of different forms. You can customize these forms. In this case, I'm going to look at landscape and kind of show what the system can report is going to look like. So if I go out here and print preview, I'm able to see exactly what my purchase order is going to look like here within this print preview screen. Okay. So here's my sample, of course, my company logo, and just a basic purchase order. And we can take this information and we can email it directly out of the system. Okay. Who ordered it? Here's the project. Here's the quantities and amounts, and then any type of language that we have, legal language at the bottom as far as terms. Okay. Real quick, that's just a little kind of an overview of purchase orders. Now we're going to move a little bit over into subcontracts. Subcontracts is basically where the labor and the material is done by our subcontractor. Okay. So within Sage 100 Contractor, I have what is called my original subcontract, who the vendor is, what the subcontract date is going to be, any change orders that have happened against the subcontract, and also tracking the invoices that have been issued against the subcontract. Okay. In the same case, similar to what we have over in our purchase orders, we come out, print custom subcontracts, putting in the language that we need, such as tracking the certificates of insurance, umbrella insurance, work comp insurance, automotive insurance, general liability. Now, particularly from the subcontract standpoint, because a lot of times we do not want to pay a sub if their certificate of insurance is expired. So Sage 100 Contractor has where we can actually bring in the certificate of insurance, where you can track that information, where you can see the contractor's license, the work comp, the general liability, and if it's expired. And how do you want it to have a warning? Yes. Do you want it to have stop pay? Yes. So that means nobody can go out and cut a check against this particular vendor and pay an invoice because until the certificate of insurance has been paid or been received. I'm sorry. So we have our information similar to what we had over in purchase orders, where we can actually set the subcontract over warning. So if we have a subcontract as what is known as our committed cost, we can actually set it to where it will warn an individual that this particular subcontract is gone over the original budget. So as you can see, the budget is still the co-star of the show, because without the budget, the system cannot go back and verify against these purchase orders and these subcontracts. So it's very important that the budget be put in the system for verification. Okay. And back to my print screen here, kind of want to go back and look at some of the subcontracts. Have quite a few that we've created, over the years. It can be customized because everybody has their own different language of what they want. So in this case, I have my subcontract agreement between this contractor and the company, put in my contract language and set up, and anything that is pertinent to the actual subcontract. Very, very customizable. And everybody always asks the question, well, you say it is, but how is it? It's as simple as guys going in, looking at the form design, and basically just updating language. So I can come in and just change, add things, line things up. If it's basically just a real simple form design. So a little bit of, the budget, the proposal, subcontracts, and purchase orders. But like anything on the project, nothing in the jobs and in construction ever goes the way we always planned it to go. There's always a scope of change somehow. I don't think in all the years of doing this, I don't think I've ever seen anyone not necessarily have a change order on a progress bill, a project that's lasted over 6 months to a year. There's always some type of scope of change. Okay. And this is where we come in and enter what is called our change order management. So we have what is called our, put in the job. You got to have the job. The job is the star of the show. And then we put in the actual scope of changes that we have in this particular case. Okay. So and as we're going through and looking at our change orders, its system will track it in numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we go through. But also when in order for a change order, we can put it in the status of review. Now, one of the things about project management and some of the project managers features within Sage is, say I want to hot list this, and I want, meaning that it's in the status of review. I want a project manager to come in, review it before it's actually approved. So we can actually save it in what we call hot list this, and it can actually show up in the project hot list for that PM. And that PM doesn't have to go looking through the system, search for the invoices, the subcontracts. As you can see, even with the change orders, they can simply hot list this item. For that way, it will notify the project manager, can go to the project hot list, and they can actually look for this particular change order. And we'll see that later when we go through the project hot list. Go back and recall my record. So I have what is called my budget change. So if I put a budget in the system, this particular change order is going to update my budget. So when I look at my WIP report, I'm going to have my original budget, changes, and my revised budget based on the approved change orders that are in the system. Okay. Then I have what is called my prime change detail. So as I'm looking here, I have what is called the owner change order. So exactly what's going out to the owner. So which is going to include, this is what we requested, this is our profit, our overhead, and then we can actually go into what has been approved. Okay. And of course, if we wanted to create a PO or invoice this change order directly, didn't necessarily want to go to the AIA billing, we can actually do it from this particular screen. But most times we want to make sure that this invoice, it's been in an approved status. And then that way, when we get over to progress billing, we can apprehend the change order to the progress bill, the G702703. Okay. So we got change order management. Okay. But now we have what is called on what we call some of the document control pieces of the system, such as I need to request for further information. So this is all under the document control application within project management. So I can request an RFI, which is known as a request for further information. If it's a change of plans, if I need to go through this information, because an RFI and an RFP can become a potential change order. She'll show me all the information that is required. And then I can have a little bit of routing rules down here, like who I'm routing this to, who's getting it, what do they need to do, and what they need to look at. And similar to what we have over in change order management, subcontracts, purchase orders, and AP invoices, if we need to hot list this, we can put it on the project hot list. Same things with submittals and transmittals. Transmittals is basically, I'm the transferring, it's confirmation of transferring information from one in person to another person. So if I wanted to have transmittals, I can do my transmittals, put in my transmittal information, what project, the description, and then same thing that can come out, I can put out and print the transmittal with notes. So if I have a lot of notes that I want to add to the system, I can simply just go out and do a transmittal. And I do not have to go off and print it, scan it, put it to an email. I can directly email my transmittal directly out of the system. Submittal, meaning that I want to get an approval or a response for information. So Sage 100 Contractor does also take care of submittals as well. So if I want to get out on the submittal and show exactly, status of the submittal, if it's been approved, what does this need to go through as far as our submittal transfer? So we can put in our submittals, and as well as same thing, tracking notes and where does the submittal come from? Is this type is going to be for a subcontractor or a material supplier? So basically our purchase orders and our subcontracts. Then we have what is called the daily field reports. A lot of contractors looking, especially working out on a project. Daily field reports, very, very crucial. Say, for instance, like, why didn't we go out there and work today? Because it was snowing and it was a blizzard. That's why we couldn't work out the site, because we can't lay concrete when it's below 32 degrees. So, or it was too windy, or we had a storm that came through. So daily field reports are very important. It's the field communication of what's happening in the field into the back office. A lot of times working and being in quite a few offices, daily field reports is just a piece of paper in a team somewhere or in a Slack message somewhere. It's like, but not being able to track that information in a structured system such as Sage 100 Contractor. So I could check what the weather was, what happened, what temperature was, what jobs, what employees worked out on the project, how long they worked out on the project. If it was certified, that's why we have our pay groups with prevailing wage, what cost code, if there was any type of absence or on the project or any injuries on the project, we're able to track that information. Any incidents. So we have what is called project incidents. So was there an altercation out on the project? Did someone get hurt and injured on the project for work comp claims? Was there a project damage? Was there property damage on the project? Especially when we order material. Found out quite a few times where we order material on the project, especially if that material is not being used in a couple of weeks. It's just sitting on the job. That material becomes damaged, or sometimes it gets feet and walk away. That's happened before, especially with tools. Sometimes it just take a feet and just walk away. So these things are very important when you start talking about tracking on the actual daily. What is happening on the project on a daily basis? What subcontractors have been out there? Who was working out there as far as subs? Especially from a scheduling standpoint, and I have a Gantt chart and I need to do a subcontractor call sheet. What subs are working out there on that project? What pieces of equipment were out there? Because a lot of times we find out equipment is sitting on the project and it's just sitting there. Every single one of us are driven down the street, walk somewhere, and we just see a piece of equipment just sitting there. Either a Caterpillar or a skid loader or a Bobcat. It's just sitting there. And it's like, man, that Bobcat's been sitting over there for quite a while. And it's just because somebody might not know that it's sitting on the project. It's just sitting there. And anytime that a piece of equipment is just sitting there, it is not making any money. It's just sitting there. So data field reports allow us to see exactly where pieces of equipment are at any given time, because if we need to move that piece of equipment to another project, especially if it's just sitting there and it's not making any revenue, and any units that we may have from bid items and item cost codes that we may have. Also within the actual data field reports, we can look at seeing meetings, like what type of meetings did we have? Did the owner come out? Was there a field inspection that happened this day? Was there an on-site safety inspection that just popped up out of nowhere? Where's there, like I said, the owner came out? Where's there a punch list item that came out? Did the architect come out? We can track that information as far as daily field reports. Okay. Not only on daily field reports, but also the system has what is called hours and costs to complete. So basically, how much is it going to cost us to do said particular project? And we can actually have a way where we can actually put in the actual percentage complete, especially from a PM standpoint. Well, based on the amount of the budget, The cost to date, it says we're 56.17% complete. But the PM may come in and say, no, actually, we're more like 65% complete. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Or we can put it in from a cost to date. So instead of saying we have $39,000 in the system to date, someone said, no, we really have $21,000 worth of costs that we've accumulated to date, showing us that our underbill is basically about $9,000. Okay. Also able to track our committed contracts. It's saying exactly what committed cost we've accumulated against this particular project, as well as our purchase orders and our accrued labor. So we could actually start seeing, as cost accumulated in the system, how much is it going for us? How much is it going to cost us to complete this particular project? Okay. So as we're looking here, we have what is called, calculate our cost from the percentage, or we can actually cost from the cost to complete to a percent, or we can actually do a percent from the cost to complete, allowing us to run this. Always recommend that every contractor that kind of implements Sage 100 Contractor, even our current clients, always recommend doing a cost to complete. Some of them do it on a monthly basis, some do it on a weekly basis. But it's more important, it's not so much how often you do it, but it's important that you do it, because that allows us, because cost is always fluctuating within the project. Something is always happening. So we always want to make sure that comparing exactly how much our cost is against our original budget. Getting back to having our budget within the system. How much is it going to cost us? What is our cost to date against this particular project? So in this case, it says that we're 81% complete based on the amount of cost that we've accumulated against this project. But the PMs are saying, no, we're actually 47% complete. So that already tells us that this job is getting ready to go over budget. We're getting ready to lose money on this project. It's going to eat into the profit and overhead unless we make some strategic changes now to see if we can actually, what we call, keep the water in the bucket. Because you can imagine, it's kind of like you have a bucket full of water and you got holes in it, and you move it from point A to point B, and by the time you get to point B, there's no water in the bucket. That's the same thing with the project. If we can make ways where we can plug holes in the bucket to keep the water from falling out, we can probably save this project from going under. Okay. Not only do we see cost to complete, but hours to complete. We can actually look and see exactly what our hours are within the project and seeing, okay, here's our budgeted hours that we have for 2008 hours. How many hours based on doing payroll and our payroll within the system, hours to date per phase code or per cost code, and where we are based on that percentage complete. And how many hours do we have completed? If we're over or we're under. In this case, the project manager went in and said that we are way ahead because the weather's been fine. So we're ahead of schedule. We were able to get in and get some things done. Okay. And that shows us that we're ahead of schedule, therefore keeping that cost down as far as our hours that we've accumulated against the project. Now, before we start getting into the, project hot list and the project work center, it kind of a little deviates. Sage 100 Contractor has what is called schedule. So we can go and set up tasks, and we can set up what is called a schedule, which is basically a light version of Microsoft projects. I can come in and look and set my schedule, giving me my, calendar days versus my work days, looking at a Gantt chart. So being able to see exactly the whole project, when things are starting to happen, when they're supposed to happen, when they're supposed to start, when they're supposed to finish, allowing me to see a true Gantt chart within the actual system of my project. And of course, I can, take presses, I can resize information, say, okay, maybe we can take this one down a little bit. And notice it takes everything that's predecessor behind it, it will readjust it as well based on our dates. Readjusting our calendar days as well as our work days. So this is a light Microsoft projects that a project manager can use to keep track of their project schedules. Okay. And then, of course, if I wanted to look at a critical path, I can take that information too. And real quick, kind of talk about a little bit of the reports, especially from if I'm working with a lot of subs. I want to do what is called a subcontractor call sheet. So for instance, this particular project, I want to go on and look at my subcontractor call sheet. And I want to say exactly, I have one contractor up in the Midwest. They send this out weekly to their subs. They say, okay, guys, you need to be where you need to be, because if they're not, that's going to slow the project down. Slow the project down, then guess what? Time and budget. That always seems to be the two things that make a project go out of scope. I didn't finish the project when I said I was going to finish it, which therefore is going to cost me more money or cost somebody more money. So time and budget are always the two pieces. And so we have what is called the subcontract call sheet. So we have graze, heating, and cooling. This is, if we're tracking phases, to be the phase. This is the task that they're working on. This is the start date and the finish date. You're supposed to be out there on the 1st of August, and you're supposed to be done by the 1st of, and you're only going to be out there one day. Okay. Subcontract call sheets. Also, we have what is called the critical path report. So if I wanted to look at a critical path report based on my project, as I showed in my Gantt chart, I just simply print preview and I go in here and look at my, critical path reports, showing me exactly when things start, when it finished, and if I have any days on the float. And it shows me the duration of that particular phase. Okay. Now back to the project work center. When I look in project management, because we talked earlier about doing what is called the project hot list. So underneath what is called the project work center, I have what is called, I can look at information based on a actual. So I want to go and look at job 186. So job 186, the change order that I actually put as a hot list. So if I'm the PM, I can come in and look at information that has been hot listed for me to go take a look at. And I don't have to, somebody write it on a piece of paper, or have somebody talk to me and tell me what it is. I need you to go in the system and look at this. No, only thing accounting has to do is just put it on the hot list. Once it's on the hot list, then it will show up here in the project work center, allowing the PM to go in and take this information to review it. So anything that's hot listed, they can go in and just simply drill down. It's hot listed. They can come in, review, put their notes in if they have any notes in the system, and then take it off the project hot list and get it ready for accounting if anything that needs to be processed. So all of my items actually showing all my records, project hot list, kind of keeping the PMs involved in the actual project or in the actual job scope of the actual project. So a lot of times, like I said, it's more of one of those things where accounting is doing and moving very quickly, getting data in, moving data, cutting checks, processing payroll, doing bank reconciliations, doing credit card reconciliations, and they necessarily don't have the time to stop to go over and say, hey, as a PM, to look at something that's important information. But at the same time, a PM may get very, very kind of little bit frustrated with accounting, especially if they assign costs to a project that they're not ready to assign costs to. So therefore, it allows the kind of relationship to be very cohesive. So accounting does not have to stop their day-to-day processes. The only thing they have to do is go in and just click a box, say, hey, this doesn't look right. Can you please review this, especially if a job is going over budget, or we have a message that popped up similar to the purchase order where it says, hey, this exceeds the original scope or budget amount. Go ahead and put it on the hot list. For that way, a PM can actually come in and take the time to actually review it. And as you can see in this case here, we see who the contact is, we see who the client is, and we see all the information, and they can keep track of the information without actually having to go through the system. Also, what this does is it allows the project managers to be out of the accounting piece of the software, because accounting gets very, very testy having PMs on the accounting side of the house. So this kind of keeps them out of accounting a little bit and kind of put them over more into project management, but allowing them to see what is happening on their project at any given time. Okay. So real quick, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of these reports. And this is probably one of the most fascinating reports within the system. And we'll talk in another session about, really looking and diving into the reports of the system. But I do want to talk about this one report. This is what is called the buyout report. Basically telling me how much cash do I need to have on hand to complete a certain project. Okay. This is called the buyout report. If I have, my cost to date, making sure my budget's within the system, At Sage 100 Contractor does a lot of mathematics on the back end part of this to show exactly what is needed to finish out a particular project. A lot of contractors use this report based on if I need to go out and get a project done and I need to get done quickly, I could take this buyout report based on the trends and see exactly what my target, how much cash is going to be required for me to finish out a particular project. So if I have some little slow time and I want to get a project done because we're getting ready to start another project, I could take this buyout report, maybe add a small little more profit and overhead to get a little bit of cushion. So if I want to make this maybe 165, I can go to the owner and say, if you give me $165,000 in cash today, finish out this project, we can go ahead and finish out this project, which is also known as the buyout report. So showing us all what is per cash, how much cash is going to be required to finish out this particular project. So this concludes a little bit of the project management features within Sage 100 Contractor. Thank you for taking the time to watch this demo video. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thank you, and you have a wonderful day.